You're listening to the Emulsion Podcast, a show that informs and inspires the restaurant industry to work, live, and create better. My name's Justin Khanna, and I'm a chef and media producer with almost 10 years of experience in award-winning restaurants all over the world. I created this show as a way to give back, to inspire the next generation, and to help you progress your career. The Emulsion Podcast is sponsored by you folks, and Patreon is where that happens. If you're here as a return listener and you enjoyed the episode you just came from and happen to want to support more episodes, I'd really appreciate it. Go ahead and check out patreon.com/Justin Khanna. Thanks in advance if you can. I totally understand if you can't. Free ways you can support this show include leaving a like or comment on this video, filling up all 5 stars on iTunes, or simply sharing an episode with a friend. This is an interview show. If you missed out on asking your burning question to today's guest, don't let that happen again. There is a really handy-dandy form where you can see upcoming guests and ask them your questions. Be sure to check out justinkhanna.com/podcast. I'd encourage you to see who I've got coming up.
I thought I would just keep going as an executive chef until I'd run out of steam. But, you know, I hit a certain point where my priorities changed, and I never thought they would.
Totally.
I always thought I'd be the last person.
I was super excited to get today's guest on the show because I'm still learning about him myself. Derek Bugge is a chef, a dad, and a taco creating machine that I had the pleasure of meeting in the fall of 2017. We ended up Instagram messaging each other as like, hey, you're a chef in Seattle, I'm a chef in Seattle, let's meet up. And we instantly hit it off. Derek is very matter of fact, which I really enjoy. He speaks his mind 100%. Originally growing up in Ballard, right here in Seattle, Derek worked his way through kitchens in Portland and Seattle alike, eventually opening up 99 Park on the east side, as well as 2120 downtown in the Belltown neighborhood, which instantly got good reviews when it opened last year. Spoiler alert, he's no longer there, but he was the winner of Guy's Grocery Games on Food Network during their fine dining episode, and he's currently working on another very high-profile opening here in Seattle, but I'm like 94% sure I'm not okay to disclose that information, so I'll just rely on you to follow along with Derek's journey to learn a little bit more about that. We talk, is culinary school worth it? His dream job serving perfect tacos. Is there such thing as a perfect taco? Good and bad advice to young chefs, and so much more. It's not often that I will get an executive chef here on the show. They don't often have the most flexible schedules, so I'm feeling very fortunate to have Derek on. I really, really hope you enjoy this episode. Do you get inspired by food trips?
I do, 100%. Because I already have my ideas of what I'm going to be experiencing. And it's fun to compare those expectations to reality once I actually get to the destination.
What was it for you? Because you haven't been to Italy before.
I've never been there.
Where were your expectations?
I didn't really have any because I've never really been a huge consumer of Italian food here. You know, my options are in Seattle and the Northwest are kind of limited as far as what I consider to be authentic Italian food. So I very much went with an open mind, and so Italy was an interesting thing. But it was had I had expectations, I think they would have exceeded them with a higher quality of food than I was expecting. You know, every single pasta dish was cooked perfectly. All the sauces were amazing. You could tell all the ingredients were fresh. You know, they definitely take pride in their national cuisine.
That was one thing that stood out for me a lot was, I mean, you've had handmade pasta before, right? It's like, it's not the first time, but I don't know what it was. It was like something about it, like the texture or the way that it was served, or like, I don't know what it was. Do you know what I'm talking about though?
I do, 100%. I'm also a firm believer in that your environment has a lot to do with,
so being there.
Yeah. Having
just as much. Mm-hmm.
You know, having that dish in a trattoria in Rome, if I had had that exact same dish on my kitchen table at home, it wouldn't have tasted as good.
Got it.
You know, you know, eating is not just about the food. It's about the experience. It's about who you're sharing it with. It's about where you're at. It's about, you know, even what music you're listening to, what kind of mood you're in. Mm-hmm. You know, we've all had dishes multiple times that are made to be the same way. You know, take McDonald's, for example. You eat a McChicken. It's going to taste exactly the same every single time, 100% of the time. But it's depending on your mood or where you're eating it, or how, you know, you can make a McChicken taste good if you're sitting there with somebody you love in a good mood, you know, on a beach somewhere. Maybe
that's why it's like, it's comfort food for me, because that's like when I would like go out with my friends when we were teenagers, we'd go get McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like that's, I don't know. I have very strong memories of that.
Wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. I totally get it. You know, it's, I will forever love McDonald's ice cream. Mm-hmm. Always. Mm-hmm. My entire life. When I was a little kid, I fell out of the bathtub and I knocked out my 2 front teeth. And fortunately, they were baby teeth, but still hurt. I was crying and crying and crying. My mom was like, if you stop crying, I'll get you anything you want. And so I wanted this toy rifle, and so I stopped crying. But I remember after I went to the doctor, I went and got ice cream from McDonald's. And so it was just this nostalgic value to me. It reminds me of one of my most prominent childhood memories. And whether I like the taste or not, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's going to taste the same every single time. It's going to remind me of a happy childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I always revert to, stories like that.
So how do you get your McDonald's ice cream? Is it in a cone?
Just in a cone, yeah.
No dip, no fudge?
I get no dip, no sauce, no nothing.
Uh-huh.
I'm a purist.
Yeah?
I'm an absolute purist at heart. Look at my coffee. It's black.
Yep.
I eat pepperoni pizza. I like plain cheeseburgers with, mayo, ketchup, lettuce, tomato, onion. I don't go for all the blue cheese and fried onion rings and stuff. I am absolutely a purist when it comes to food. I like the simple things done right rather than the complicated things not done well.
Sure. I'm going to write down some notes as we're going through here because there's some things that I want to ask. Simple. What about Paris? When you went prior to Paris, were you at like a still moldable phase in your life?
No, I didn't go to Paris till later on in life. And I never wanted to go to Paris. I didn't really have any expectations. I grew up with this idea of what the French were. You have those preconceived notions that they're snooty and pompous and arrogant and they smell, and that wasn't the case at all. Everyone in France, and especially Paris, they're so fantastic. The people are so genuine and so nice. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that I told them I was Mexican and I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't tell anybody I was American. But the people in Paris are fantastic. They're always willing to help. They always have smiles on their faces, and they're just a fantastic people. I love it there.
Was there a particular? Do you recommend that people go if they're gonna go, if they're cooks? Because there's that classic notion of like the chef that goes to Europe and particularly in France that like they walk away completely changed. Do you see that? Do you recommend that? Do you think that it's still that kind of city or it's not?
I've never studied. I've never studied in France as far as culinary goes. I've never studied in France at all. Mm-hmm. I think the days of that true like French cuisine being, like Paris being the mecca for high-end cuisine, I think those days are over. That the white tablecloth French cream and butter-based sauces.
Paris doesn't like that anymore, right?
No.
Like it's not even just like the world doesn't like that. It's
there's so much international influence on it. I think Bocuse was kind of the last of that era. He was the last man standing, and unfortunately with his passing, I think those days are gone.
Right.
They obviously still have the very high level of cuisine, but I think Spain is kind of where it's gravitated towards lately, with the advancements of molecular gastronomy and all that. I think they're at the forefront now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you had to go back to Italy, would you do the same trip or you would try to explore?
No. If I had to go back to Italy, I would head south.
Yeah.
We started in Rome and went north, which was great. It was a great experience. I have no regrets. Mm-hmm. But when I go back, I'm definitely going to start at Rome and head south.
Sure.
End up in Sicily.
Yeah. It's a similar. It's the same because we did 3 cities in Italy, and it still feels. I have the same answer. I want to go back and I want to do something different.
Yeah.
Because and that's cool as a country, right? Especially,
it's fantastic.
Because, there's some places you go where it's like you can go experience a city or two and feel like you've experienced their culture. Feel like I've just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
With Italian food.
Yeah, and kind of like we were talking about London. Mm-hmm. I not to get ahead of myself, but I feel like I've kind of picked up most of what England's about.
Same.
Just having been in that little bit with Italy. Every city felt different. Every city had its own culture, its own food, its own style. Even the infrastructure of every city looked completely different.
Sure.
Rome and Florence, they looked completely different. Mm-hmm. So I really want to go back and explore, the coastal cities, the islands, and It was a lot of fun.
You were the first, well, maybe not the first, but you were one of the only people I remember that backs me up that London is just not that exciting.
No.
What is it about it that just doesn't, is it too internet, like it doesn't have an identity?
So here's how I've been explaining it to people, because everybody says the same thing. The way that we planned the trip, we started out in Italy, worked our way through northern Italy, and then went over to France through Paris, and then went over to London. Now, if you think of that route as a shower, it was like taking a nice long hot shower and then turning on the cold right at the end. It was like we were blanching and then just getting thrown in the ice water. We were in these romantic cities of Rome and Florence and Paris where people spoke a different language and the food was exotic and the styles were exotic and people dressed differently. And then we go to London. Maybe our expectations were different because, we had been in these magical places that, you see and dream about. And then we're in a land where people speak English.
Yep.
London is a very, very crowded city. And people are not as nice about it as they are in other countries. The food was comparable to what we have in the United States as far as flavor profiles and cooking styles. The infrastructure is kind of decrepit. A lot of it is post World War II because of unfortunately what happened with the bombings and stuff, raids over World War II. So a lot of it is newer. It doesn't have quite that history that Rome does, or that any part of Italy or France. It was just kind of, it felt cold. Not just the temperature, but the whole city itself felt cold.
I feel the same way. And it's not to hate on anyone that's from there, but it's just there's something. Maybe that is what it is. I feel like I'm in Europe, but there's too much of that Americanized something, whether it's the language or whether it's like the culture where they're like, I don't know, there's like a weird crossover. It's trying to be too international or what, I don't know what it is. England just doesn't, maybe not England. I haven't have you explored outside of London? Maybe that's another question.
No, the only other part of UK that I've been to is Dublin. And I kind of felt the same. I was not a fan of Dublin at all.
Sure.
I felt very persecuted in Dublin, which is interesting. Which is something that I wasn't even expecting. But there was a lot of hostility and animosity towards me in Dublin. Outside of Dublin, in Southern Ireland, it was fantastic.
You're fine?
Yeah.
Interesting. When was that? When did you go to Ireland?
2 years ago.
Okay. Cool.
Year and a half.
Taking it back to the sentence you said earlier about being a purist, I know that we've talked a little bit about you doing tacos somehow, some way after this. What is the purest version of a taco for you? If you had to articulate it.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Well, maybe you can break it down into different styles of taco, because I know you can't say that a pure taco. A friend of mine from Ensenada would argue that a fish taco, a fried fish taco, is super simple and pure, and that's it.
That's where we differ. My background is southern Mexico, mainly Oaxacan cuisine. A fish taco is not a taco.
Okay.
A nice braised meat, nice carnitas taco is just perfect. Carnitas, a little bit of queso fresco, and some, pickled onions, a little jalapeno.
Yep.
Salsa verde. It's tough to be a purist when it comes to tacos. But I guess I am. Now that I think about it, I've never actually combined the two thoughts together.
Right.
But I don't I'll never put shredded lettuce on my taco. That's not a thing. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that in front of me anyway.
Is it always a corn tortilla? Always.
What's the other option?
Always two tortillas.
Always two
corn tortillas.
Always two.
Okay.
There's no other tortillas other than corn tortillas. Flour tortillas is not a thing.
So where does it stand for you with different? Maybe I'm trying to tease out a little bit of the similarities that you see between Mexican food and that Italian journey, where it's things differ depending on where you go. And do you have obviously, if you're thinking more Oaxacan style stuff, that's where you're going to gravitate towards. But is there any other regions in Mexico where you're
Yeah, I've traveled quite a bit through Mexico, and similar to the United States, Mexico is very diverse in its demographic as far as cuisine goes. There are some things take a a sope, for example. Sope is a flat tortilla with the sides pinched up, toppings over the center. They call it different things in different parts of the country. Some of them are unrecognizable to me. Unrecognizable to me. They call them huaraches in some parts. Sopes, picadas. These are all different names for the same thing. There's also different flavor profiles because there's just different climates. Down out in the Yucatan Peninsula, there are foods and flavors that I have no understanding of whatsoever. Kind of the same in the north too. Northern Mexico, southern Texas. They have the same climate, so they're going to have different foods up there. So that's kind of how I felt with Italy. Italy, from what little I have to compare to as far as Mexico goes, it's kind of separated into like cream sauces and tomato sauces. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to, travel the country extensively and make as many comparisons as I like. But, I could see that there were some regional foods that were definitely stood out.
Mm. Do you have any, when you're making dinner for your wife, have you guys made pasta yet?
Since we've been back?
Yeah. No. It was like the first thing we called it, what did we call it? We did a dinner maybe like 3 weeks after we came back, and I did a dish called Winter in Bologna because it was like, I just wanted to make pasta. There was like no other, I had no good reason to do it. I just wanted to do it.
That would be, we're probably going to do that, but we've only been back for 48 hours?
Exactly,
we're a little jet lagged
still.
But no, I think once it settles in, we're definitely going to try it. I know for one, I'm definitely going to try and replicate this carbonara that I had, that trattoria.
Totally.
Oh, God.
You got to find guanciale.
No, that's easy.
Yeah. Get some guanciale. Yeah. That's so good.
Oh, yeah.
It was such a good, we'd make that for staff meal quite a bit. Because it's just like, it makes people happy.
Oh, yeah.
Pasta makes people happy. If you were to go back to Mexico, what would you be looking to gain? If from a chef's perspective?
More of an understanding of the flavor profiles that come from the region where my mom's from. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until recently, and by recently I mean the last several years, that I really identified my cooking style with Latin flavors. I've kind of been freestyling it, kind of picking up what I could here and there from different chefs that I worked for over the years. And I didn't really have a true identity. It wasn't until I took over 99 on the east side that I really, we really wanted to rebrand as far as what our cuisine was. And we kind of, the menu was kind of all over the place. It was, mussels with curry, and there's a little Japanese, there was a little Indian, there was a little of everything. And so we sat down with the owners and we thought, well, okay, what can we identify with? Latin cuisine is what I know, it's what I love, it's what I was raised on, it's the flavors that I understand the best. So we rebranded as that, Modern American with Latin fusion. Ever since we made that decision, I have taken it on personally to better myself as far as Latin cuisine goes. So if I would love to go back to Mexico, spend some time with some chefs, both high profile in the higher end restaurants, the Pujols of the world. But really what I would love to do is just go out into the country and work with the little old women who, feed the men who come out of the fields.
Totally.
And, who make mole from scratch, and who make, the tortillas on the comal. And that's really where you're going to get a good understanding of where those Latin flavors come from.
I want to dive deeper into that because it's something that I'm currently going through myself, where it's like I spent a lot of time cooking other chefs' food. Like that was all my training, which I would never discourage anyone to not do. But then you get to this point where you're like, what is your identity? Because you grew up here in Seattle, well, in Ballard.
Yeah.
When was that point, and what were some, if you have advice for anyone listening that is looking to get that style, what has proved valuable for you? What
has proved valuable to me is to think for yourself. And the thing that I can most closely relate it to, as you know, I just recently became a father. And having your own cooking style is like a son growing up. You have a certain set of ideals that you are passed on from your father, which, is other chefs. You have these ideals that are passed on through your career, basically through your nurturing stage as becoming a cook into a chef. You have these nurturing years of things that are passed on to you. Eventually you gain enough experience and ideas where you can make your own ideas, where you're no longer under the umbrella of your chef or your father. You can now go out and bloom and grow for yourself. And really that point hit me several years ago. I was around 31, 32 years old. And I realized that, you know what, I've gained enough experience and ideas, and I feel confident in myself to where I can go out to the world and start to rebrand my name and create a reputation based on my own ideas. And a lot of it was having the confidence to do that. You really, really need to be confident about what it is you're doing. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 19, and it took me until I was about 32 to really make that decision that, you know what, this is what I'm good at, this is what I love. This is what I'm going to embrace and move forward with. And that's exactly what I've done. And so I have made a brand name for myself with, Latin style cooking. And, I'm not anywhere near to where I want to be as far as that goes.
I draw a lot of comparisons between food and music. Do you recommend, that kind of period where you're playing cover songs, where like, did you ever have a point where you were taking other chefs' dishes that were like, I can identify with that, so this is what I'm going to cook, and I'm going to see what it turns into when I put my hands on it? Did you have any dishes that were like, oh my god, this is such a perfect fusion? Like, I know I've had that lately with Indian food quite a bit, where it's like I look at food with my perspective that I have, with the skills that I have, but I kind of like put on these Indian glasses, and through those lenses you can see something that like you never would have thought of before had you not done that.
Yes and no. I never wanted to replicate a dish, because it's kind of the whole do unto others thing. I would never want to sell something that's not mine as my own.
Right.
But in that, you're always going to have an idea from somebody else.
Sure.
Chicken stock has already been invented. That's what I like. It's kind of the analogy I always use. You're never going to, I don't want to say never, but you're not going to create something new. So every idea is going to be taken from another idea. So yeah, I had my mentor who was down in Portland, who I always think of as the most influential person in my life as far as culinary goes. I use a lot of his ideas in dishes that I do, but definitely put my own take on them. And that's what you need to do. You can't start to go out on your own and forget everything that you've ever learned.
Right.
That's not the way it works.
Sure.
There's a reason you build up to it, through grade school, high school, and then college. You're just building on ideas and concepts and experiences that you already have.
Has there been any other resources that you found particularly valuable with your food? I know that I get a lot of inspiration from other art forms, particularly music, when I'm thinking about... it's why I draw so many comparisons. It's when I talk about cover songs, and like there's value in remixing, right? Like there are DJs who don't write any of their own songs. They just like take other people's songs, spin it,
sure,
and then it works. Do you get any inspiration from anywhere else other than, food or eating or?
Yeah, the Northwest.
Totally.
So I spend a lot of time outdoors. We live in the most beautiful area that I've ever been to personally. There's so much influence outside. The wild mushrooms, just the smells and the flavors and the foliage and everything you see outside. So one thing that people around me know is that I go to the Pike Place Market probably once a week, at least once a week. And I just walk up and down and I talk to the vendors. They all know me. And like, hey, what's fresh? What's good? What's coming up? What's ending? And I always just start with one idea, one ingredient, and think, okay, here I have these, beautiful black trumpet mushrooms. I'm going to have these for the next 6 weeks. What goes well with that? Okay, now I got two things. And so these ideas always develop. So Seattle is my inspiration.
Totally.
I don't really listen to a lot of music, not gonna lie.
That's fine. Do you think that there is a stigma behind those? I'm coming from the perspective of being really passionate about working with nice ingredients, but I feel like there's so many other things that go into it. As far as what is it about sourcing the ingredients that gets you excited?
I like to know where my products come from.
Got it.
So a big thing for me is whenever I've taken over a restaurant, I want to meet every vendor individually. And
Dope.
Going beyond that, I want to meet every individual farmer that I can. I've spent a significant amount of time up in the Skagit Valley finding where all my produce comes from. I've actually pulled cauliflower from the fields at Houghton with them. I have gone to the oyster farms out in Lillewop and Hamahama and up in Lopez Island with Jones Family Farms. I've been to the coast and met some of the fishmongers there. I travel to as many places as I can so that I actually have a better understanding of where my product comes from, not just because I like to know where it comes from because I'm going to treat it with more respect.
Sure.
And if the first time I see something is when it comes out of a box, it doesn't really mean anything to me. If I have actually spent the time to travel to Skagit, to Houghton Farms, and put my hands in the dirt and worked with the farmers, and I know that's where it comes from, I'm going to treat it with a lot more respect.
Yeah, and when you see it, it has a different
Right.
meaning. And some of these guys are like, yeah, we were talking a while back about, like, you had some of these guys at your wedding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Two of my groomsmen are vendors of mine and are very, very dear friends. Yeah.
That's awesome. I need to make it out to some of these places and do that exploring.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The Hama Hama Oysters, you ever heard of them?
I'm going. Patrick has an event with them where
Okay.
he's doing like a live art something where they're doing their. I don't know what the event is called. It's like a big oyster thing.
Oyster-rama.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm going for that.
Oh,
I'm super excited.
Yeah, Oyster-Rama is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They're like second family to me. Everyone from the owner to the people who pick the oysters.
Totally.
I've had a very, very close relationship with those guys over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic people.
Me being super new to Seattle and you having spent a lot of time here, what is kind of your state of the union on Seattle as far as like how it stands, not just as its own city, but compared to other U.S. cities? And what are you excited about? What are you kind of like, I'm so over this in Seattle right now? If you have any.
Are we going beyond food?
We can.
All right.
I mean, because you have some roots here. You have some pretty stable roots here.
I don't want to take this time to stand on my soapbox and complain about all the buildings that are going up,
Yep.
but I will. I'm really excited about the food.
Yeah.
As you know, I was born and raised here, and I went to culinary school down in Portland. And after school, I stayed for another 7 years. At that time, Portland had overtaken Seattle as far as the culinary scene goes. And lately, Seattle has kind of taken that throne back.
Yep.
And I'm really, really excited about that. I'm really excited for Seattle to get more recognition than it's been getting. Canlis just got recognized as made the shortlist for James Beard Best Restaurant. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. I honestly never thought I would see that. Eduardo is getting so much
huge,
well-deserved credit for June Baby and Solari. I mean, he's doing amazing things. There's so much happening as far as what has happened in Seattle in the past. Seattle's finally being recognized, and people are starting to think, okay, it's not just Southeast Alaska anymore. It's actually its own city with its own ideas, its own style of cuisine. I love oysters. I've had oysters from, I don't want to say all over the world, but I've definitely had
your fair share.
My fair share. I think our oysters are by far the best. I've had a significant amount from Europe, and Virginicas from the East Coast, and from Japan, and our Pacifics that we grow here, which is funny because Washington only has one native oyster,
right?
But the oysters that we have here and cultivate here are in my belief, second to none. Mm-hmm. Some of the seafood we have. I love that my salmon and my halibut is pulled from miles from where I live. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I was talking to my aunt, and she lives in Wisconsin, mm-hmm. and she said she gets her salmon from Walmart. I just thought, oh fuck!
Damn it!
Yeah, right.
Damn it!
I didn't really know what to say to that. But I love the abundance of. I'm glad that people are starting to recognize the abundance of resources that we have here with the mountains. The mountains and the fields, the valleys, the Skagit Valley, the Cascades. You can go foraging for the best chanterelles you will ever have.
Totally.
You get your morels there. The matsutakis come from the Olympics. You have all that beautiful, beautiful produce that comes out of the North Skagit, and then the water speaks for itself. You have every kind of beautiful. I mean, if you haven't had a Hood Canal spot prawn, you've never had a shrimp.
Wow,
that's my opinion.
Okay,
it's like butter flavored shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Totally. What is Seattle? Is Seattle missing anything, or is there anything you'd like to see kind of like come through Seattle? Does it need anything? Is it on the right track? Is it need to be?
I think Seattle is on the right track. One thing that I will stand on my soapbox and talk about is the Michelin rating. Mm-hmm. I think that Canlis is well deserving of at least a 1 star. Mm-hmm. I have never been a Michelin judge, so I don't know what it takes. But I have been to Michelin restaurants, and I do know that Canlis is up there as far as caliber goes. Caliber with cuisine and caliber with the wine list and the hospitality. I know it's challenging because there's not many restaurants in the Northwest. I could probably name less than 5 if I really thought about it.
That are deserving of a Michelin star.
That are deserving of a Michelin star. But I'd really like to see the opportunity for restaurants, in particular, restaurants like that, Canlis, who have been established and have that reputation.
So that's my big rant on the whole thing is why the fine dining scene in Seattle, where, like you said, Canlis would probably be a 1-star. Why is there no one shooting for 2 and 3? Like, why is there no restaurant where you and I both go 3 stars? Totally, this place. I argue because there is no Michelin guide, because all of that work and all of that dedication and time and effort spent to build a restaurant like that, a lot of chefs do it for the stars at the end of that road.
Sure. And
if you're not going to get that kind of recognition, if the best thing you're going to get is like a James Beard and a mention in the Seattle Times, it doesn't do it for a lot of chefs, right? So I would rather, as a chef, this chef would rather go to Chicago, San Francisco, New York, right, or DC. Those are the only 4 cities that have Michelin guides. But I mean, you even look at DC. There's no 3-star Michelin in DC.
Right.
They still have a guide. I talked in the podcast a couple weeks ago about how I think that Michelin is very much so in this weird position in the U.S. right now, where they would be better off doing similar to how they do Scandinavia, where they break it down into regions. So what if there was a Michelin guide for the West Coast? What does that look like? Right? Because then it's like Washington, Portland, San Francisco, and LA, which doesn't have a Michelin guide right now, all get roped in. That makes it interesting. And then there's a Midwestern Michelin guide and then an East Coast Michelin guide. That could be interesting. But that's where my head's at with it is if the recognition's not there, like Canlis has been around forever. But I agree, it would help a lot. I just don't necessarily think, I think that would draw in a lot of, everyone would come out of the woodwork and try to go for the stars after that.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of a balance too, because I don't think Seattle's really ready to receive that kind of cuisine yet too. That's why we kind of have the unofficial term of Seattle fine dining.
Right.
You look at the Tom Douglas and Ethan Stolls of the world, and Josh Henderson. Some of their restaurants are the quote unquote Seattle fine dining. We don't really have that white tablecloth, English hospitality style restaurant, just for that reason. But I don't think Seattle's really ready, to be honest, to receive that caliber of restaurant as well.
Sure.
The Bernardines or Linea or the Graces of the world. I think some people have tried on a small scale and it didn't really work. Josh Henderson tried the tasting menu at the Nest with their chef's tasting. That didn't work.
Yep.
Shota tried it with Naka, and it didn't work. He had to close down and rebrand as Adana, which is doing amazingly well.
Sure.
So I just don't think Seattle's quite ready to receive.
It's such a dichotomy, right? Because it's like you have all, like, we literally just talked about all this amazing product. We literally talked about all this expansion and all this money that's happening in the city.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it's like, it's what I spent all of 2017 doing, is figuring out why the hell is there no 3 Michelin star place here? Because it's like, it's so ripe for it, right? Like, it's such a white space, such an untapped thing. It's so funny. I can't get over that idea. So maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into your experience as an executive chef here in Seattle. And maybe you can give us like a little quick 1-minute journey through what that's been like with 99 Park and 2120, and then where you're at now.
So when I took over 99 Park in January of 2016, I had a blast. I had full autonomy. I had everything readily available to me. I had control over everything. And then I was quickly approached about opening 2120, the sister restaurant to 99. Where I jumped at the opportunity, and like I said, I got to design the restaurant from scratch,
from the ground up.
From the ground up, which is a dream come true for any chef. Hand pick I really got to take the time to hand pick and vet my cooks, and it was an amazing experience. I wouldn't have traded that for anything. But as some relationships go, it just fizzled. And now I'm at a place in my life with, my 8-month-old son now and my wife, where I need to be there for them more emotionally and physically, more so emotionally. And so I'm kind of at this place where I'm trying to figure out the next step in my life. You know, I've done the executive chef thing, and I need to figure out if that's something that I want to continue or if I want to seek other options and other revenue streams in my life.
Sure. Do you have any advice for anyone that's looking or during the process of that, taking on an executive chef role that you have from experience that, you know, might help?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we were talking about it a little bit as far as how it pertains to me, but if there's a more kind of like umbrella piece of advice that you have from your experience that might help one person listening.
Yeah. For people who want to become an executive chef, I would say coming up as a cook, take the time to listen rather than talk. Realize that every single person around you knows something that you don't. If you don't take the time to, you know, get it out of them, to really listen to what other people are saying, you're going to fail. You know, you have to be humble. And I know that's hard for cooks to accept because there's so much ego in restaurants. There's, yeah, I always revert back to the salad. The best salad I made was taught to me by a dishwasher at a Mexican restaurant some years ago. It was a Yucatec habanero and pig ear salad.
Whoa!
And it's fantastic, and it just goes to that mindset of like, just because you are a sous chef or a CDC, a chef de cuisine or something, that doesn't mean that that you're better than every single person below you. You know, that think about how much experience is combined with those people that work around you. If you really, you know, take the time to listen to them, you're going to be a lot better chef for it, I think.
Totally. And so you are kind of like, there's nothing on your plate right now. That's where you're at, and that's where you're happy.
That's where I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm just loving this time, getting to hang out with Roman, my son, every day, and really bonding with him, and just relaxing, just putting myself back together. You know, like I was saying earlier, I've put a lot of miles on my mind and my body over the last 15 years. Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of changing the tires and doing a couple slow laps right now.
Totally.
Just slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Just taking some stress off and decompressing.
Is there any? We were talking a little bit about it, that you missed the restaurant cappuccinos. Oh. Is there anything else that you miss about the restaurant, or you're kind of like? Because I have a friend who, she was an expediter at Tallulah's for a little while, and then she's done a bunch of other like odd restaurant jobs in her life, and we've had this conversation multiple times where she tells me she misses restaurants. There's something about it. I mean, it hasn't been that long, but is there anything like right off the bat where you, or maybe you foresee that you're gonna miss something about it?
I miss teaching people.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I'd miss since day one. I like having eager cooks that want to better themselves and that have put themselves in a place, humility wise, where they were willing to listen to me and, not listen to me blindly, but they were in places where they wanted to learn from me, and I was eager to teach them and willing, and that was one thing that I really, really enjoyed, was teaching eager minds. But outside of that, I don't miss it.
A restaurant cappuccino. Every now and again.
Yeah, every now and
right before the service.
Yeah.
How did you... it was a hot cappuccino? Do you like iced coffee?
I do like iced coffee. I miss the cappuccinos in Italy.
Oh.
That's
got it.
No, we I would just black Umbria coffee is my...
Your go-to?
My go-to, yeah.
I had to do that. It was like we had the strongest hotline at the restaurant in Norway that we had in the experience of the restaurant. I got to a point where I would get set up for service consistently day after day, and my chef came to me and he's like, I want you to add to your prep list a Canberra of iced coffee. Keep it in your lowboy. And you just dish it out to all the cooks.
Perfect.
It was like, are you like that? Do you like the iced coffee during your shift?
All depends on how hot I am, really.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I'm true Seattleite. In winter, it's hot coffee. In the summer,
got it.
Summer as it gets here, I get.
I'm finding that as well. I try to keep it to 2 cups a day. Otherwise, I get a little bit too.
I've been trying to keep it to one.
One?
1 cup a day. I had some heart problems last year.
Ooh.
And my yeah. I didn't get into that. But, no, I had some heart problems last year, and so I really needed to start taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. And one of those things was minimizing my caffeine intake. So I try and limit myself to 1 cup in the morning.
Sure.
And that's it.
That's it?
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry I gave you another cup.
No. I was walking around, my blood pressure. My standing blood pressure was 160 over 125.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
I'm supposed to give blood after this. I'm a universal donor, so
Okay.
I try to give blood whenever I can. But what do you think about it with restaurants? It makes it so hard to think about your health because it becomes secondary, right? When you're there. Do you credit? Yeah.
Restaurants are tough because they consume you.
Mm-hmm.
As a cook, it was easy. Coming up through my 20s, it was easy. I would hang out in the morning, do whatever, and I would go to work, do my job, set up my line, go through service. I'd go home, have fun, drink with my buddies, and forget about it. As an executive chef, that's when you start to bring your work home. That's when other areas of your life start to suffer. Maybe not even as executive chef, even as a sous chef. You start to think about numbers. Are you going to hit your labor? Are you going to hit your food costs? You start to think about prep. Did I make a good prep list? Down to little things like, did I store the walk-in properly?
That thing's not labeled. Fuck.
Yeah. I mean, these ideas just start to consume you, and then you have this snowball effect where you want to go in early, and you want to make sure everybody's set up, and you want everybody to be doing things your way because you have these ideas in your head and that you want to come out as well as possible, but you only have 2 sets of hands. And then, people call in sick every day, and that's up to you to fill in. And then, the owners have ideas, and GMs have ideas, and servers have ideas. And, there's so many moving parts to a restaurant. And the more managerial duties you have, the more these things stress on you. And then, we took it one step further where I wanted to make it to the top, And so I was trying to stay relevant by changing the menu as often as I could. That's just an enormous undertaking in itself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be quarterly. I wanted to be weekly.
Yep.
And it's, unless you've done it, it's hard to explain how much work goes into a menu change. It's not just the dishes that you're coming up with. It's also teaching an entire staff, and then
because you can make that dish, doesn't
right? Teaching an entire kitchen staff, and then training an entire front of house how to teach it. I wanted to my servers to explain it as if they had created the dish themselves. That goes a lot. You're doing that on a weekly basis. And on top of that, you're worrying about food costs because you're changing over the menu so much. You're bringing in all this new products. It wears on you. And I could go on for hours. I'm sure you could too, about how much stress is involved in running a restaurant.
Totally.
And I needed to take a step back.
Right.
My priorities changed. I never thought, as like we were talking about earlier, I never thought I'd be that person where my priorities. I thought I would just keep going as an executive chef until I had run out of steam. But I hit a certain point where my priorities changed, and I never thought they would.
Totally.
I always thought I'd be the last person. You hear so many stories about people who'd come into the restaurant, like, to fix the hood fans or the dish machine, or, they would sell you your linens or whatever. And then it was the same story every single time. Oh, I used to be a chef, and I always said, I'll never be that, ever be that. And I'm not quite to that point yet, but I am to the point where I understand. I used to think, wow, they just burnouts.
Weren't cut out for it.
Yeah. I judged. I'm not going to lie. I judged them. I'm to the point where I no longer judge people for the choices they make because they had different priorities, which I'm now walking into.
You're experiencing that firsthand. Is there any sort of restaurant concept or food operation where you're like, that works? That's not a restaurant. I mean, we were just talking about you doing taco pop-ups or something like that. Can a chef sustainably thrive doing what they do in another medium, whether it's a restaurant or if there's something that you've seen where you're like, that works?
So I guess that's kind of the point of my life where I am right now, is trying to figure that out. Like anybody who knows me knows that I would love to make tacos every day. That nothing would make me happier. Right. Unfortunately, there's no money in tacos. There's, I'm okay without the glamour and the accolades and the awards at this point. But at the same time, I have people that depend on me to pay bills.
And with that money comes everything that would suck the life out of tacos for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So I guess to answer your question, I'm kind of at that point where I wonder if there is something where I can, sustainably be happy without, risking or sacrificing my personal life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. To not make this episode too pessimistic, because I mean, obviously, from a certain point of view, you could say like this is like the most unmotivating episode ever. What would you say to the person who's in culinary school right now, right? Because like I feel like you're in this very unique part of like the hero's journey, right, where you just got like knocked down and now you have to like figure out how to get, but you're gonna come through the other side way better. Would you have done it the same way, going back to square one? Would you have done it completely? Or would you go back and tell yourself, Derek, do this a different way? If you were starting from zero.
So before I forget it, is every single person goes through struggles. And this isn't even a struggle for me. This is just taking one step back so that I can take two steps forward.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. I'm not thinking of it pessimistically at all.
Sure.
This is something that I need to do personally. If I could do it all over again, if I could, put me down in day one of culinary school, I would. The only thing that I would do differently is the first couple years of my career coming out of culinary school is I didn't take them as serious as I would have liked. I honestly didn't think I was going to do this for the rest of my life. I would have paid more attention those first couple of years. But other than that, it's all about learning and learning and learning. I can't emphasize that enough. Is learn as much as you possibly can. Be humble and just learn, and then the rest of it will take care of itself. But absolutely, I have no regrets as to what I did. I was fortunate to where I had every opportunity in life. I could have done anything that I wanted. I chose this career, and I wouldn't have it any other way, even despite what I'm going through right now. I know I wouldn't have been happier doing anything else, whether it be a desk job or fighting fires or flying planes or whatever. This is what I chose to do. This is what I love. Mm-hmm. And I'm just taking a breather, which, that's why they have sabbaticals.
Right, exactly. To take it back and go a little bit more tactical or maybe strategy-wise, when you say you would have gone a little bit harder at the beginning of your career, would that have meant taking a more ambitious job, going to work for someone that was maybe a little bit out of your league, reading more cookbooks, cooking a little bit more on your own? What would you have changed about that beginning?
Glad you asked.
Yeah.
I would have staged abroad.
Okay.
I for sure would have staged abroad. I had the opportunity and I passed it up.
Where?
At Burgundy.
Okay.
In Burgundy, France. One of the first chefs that I worked for definitely saw the abilities that I had early on. Abilities that I didn't think that I had early on, and he actually pushed. It was a large kitchen. It was a very, very large kitchen, and he actually, picked me out specifically, and he saw I was just working basically as a saucier, and he's like, Derek, you have these abilities and this natural palate. He says, I have some connections in France. I want to send you to Burgundy, and I didn't do it, and I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave my friends, my family, and I was like 20. I just wanted to party, and I was about to turn 21. And, I really regret that because who knows where my career would have gone at that point. But I would have, like I said, I would have taken it a lot more seriously. I would have staged abroad for sure. I would have been more ambitious in my choice of kitchens. I would have gone for better than what I had through my early 20s. It wasn't until like my mid 20s that I was like, oh crap, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. I better start taking it more seriously. So I missed out on those first 5 years.
Were you the type of person that spent a lot of time focusing on technique? Did you go out to eat a lot when you were in those first years? I know for me personally, that was like, it was such a blessing to go to culinary school 90 minutes away from New York City, because that was all I did on my weekends was go down to Manhattan and eat. And that was just as valuable as staging at a restaurant. Did you have that same experience? Do you think the same applies to people now, or does that not always?
I think if you have the means to do that, by all means, go ahead. I did not have money in culinary school. I did not have money coming out. The way that I got as much experience as I could is I was only scheduled for 30, 35 hours a week, but I would be there for 60 to 70. I would spend all my time there learning technique, learning different products, different styles, different cuisines, because my chef at the time was so knowledgeable. and he would teach me all this stuff because he saw that I was willing to learn. I would go in on my own time. That's how I gained my experience.
Mm-hmm. Is there a piece of advice that you see given to young cooks or like line cooks or sous chefs or whatever that you see as like that's not true, or that's like a commonly mistakenly piece of advice given?
Yeah, but you're not gonna like it.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say don't go to culinary school.
Okay.
I would wholeheartly don't say it. Don't waste your money. You know, my situation was even worse than most because I went to Cordon Bleu, which if you've seen, they just settled. They just settled in court to pay back 44% of tuition. Be expecting that check soon.
Yep.
But no, you get under the right chef. You show ambition and eagerness to learn. The right chef will pick you up, and they'll teach you in a year what you'll learn at several years in culinary school. And I think that those few early years of experience are much, much more valuable than culinary school. And
this, to not get it twisted, and maybe this is my fault for not conveying it the right way, I'm not the biggest advocate for culinary school either. I get the question a lot, is culinary school worth it? Should I go? Especially CIA with the price amount that they put on their tuition. It's not cheap. Can I get the same amount of experience? Am I better off just going to work for free, staging, getting that line cook job, dishwasher job, working my way up? And yes, the answer is yes. Like, I got more experience in 6 months working for free at Per Se as I did in 2 years of culinary school. Yep. And that set me up for greater success later in life. But my argument is always I never would have gotten that Per Se job if I wasn't coming from my culinary school. Do you think there's a case when culinary school makes sense? I argue that my school sets you up to be a really good hotel chef. Like a really good, like, if you're going to do banquets, if you're going to do like that kind of cooking, totally sets you up for that. Fine dining, Michelin restaurants? No. Not really.
Not at all.
Is there a case when culinary school does matter?
I would say no.
No?
I would say no, but you got to keep in mind my experience.
Right.
I had a really, really brutal one. I went to arguably the worst culinary school in the history of culinary schools. Mm-hmm. You say you would have learned in 6 months, I would have learned in a month.
Right. Right.
But no, I stand by my statement. I think that if you really want to be a cook or a chef, I think the most valuable thing that you can do is just go work in a kitchen, any kitchen. You're 17, you're not going to get a job at Per Se. They're not going to let you in, even for free.
Yep.
But if you're 17 and you go work at anywhere and show some stability and motivation and ambition, I think that you will get picked up. And it's about establishing a network. I have friends or people that have worked for me that did that exact same thing. They started out 16, 17 years old and they knew that's what they wanted to do. And they just went and took a job at any kitchen and doing anything, and they just worked their way up. And they're better people for it, I think. Mm-hmm. So no, I stand by my statement. I don't think there's any situation where culinary school is worth it.
Got it. That's an interesting perspective. I wholeheartedly believe it. I don't think that there's. Again, I do think there's those specific use cases where it's like if you want to be a restaurant manager of a corporate location where they might require you to have some prior education to get that job, maybe you have to do the culinary school part. And if you're going to be managing the restaurant operations at a hotel, I think it's valuable to have that 4 to 5 months in a kitchen so you can empathize with your employees who are going to be those cooks, if cooking is not your thing. But I wholeheartedly agree that there's so much to be learned through real-world experience.
Absolutely.
It'd be so interesting if the U.S. were to get that like apprenticeship system that happens in Europe and Australia, and what would the industry look like if that's what people started off with as opposed to an education or a culinary school education. I don't know. I think about it sometimes.
Unfortunately, it'll never happen. I mean, they just did away with it now. They made
it's gone.
You
can't work for free anywhere here anymore. It's so sad. Do you have any closing thoughts? Do you have anything that you want people to know? That where can people find you online if you want people to find you online right now?
I'm not huge on social media.
Yeah.
I don't have Facebook. Mm-hmm. I have my Instagram, which is Chef Derek Bugge. Mm-hmm. But other than that, just watch and wait and see what I do next, because you know it's going to be big.
Totally.
I don't do anything like we were talking about earlier. I don't do anything with just one foot in the water.
Mm-hmm.
I go all in. I go big.
Mm-hmm.
So just watch out for what I do next.
Totally.
It's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot of fun.
I'm excited for you, man.
Thanks.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Emulsion podcast. I appreciate your ears more than you know. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help sponsor the show, head on over to patreon.com/Justin Khanna. Other ways you can help out right now include giving this show a review on iTunes so more people can find it. I also love seeing you folks liking and commenting on the video if you listen that way, or even just share this episode with a friend. Now is normally where I would tell you that my name is Justin Khanna and I hope you have a good one, but you've probably got another podcast episode to listen to, so I'm just going to get out of the way here. Excuse me.